As of January 2025, the Portuguese government has updated the minimum wage to 870 euros, and there has been several updates about the income tax as well as other incentives. And so if you're listening to this video and you're thinking of moving to Portugal, then please listen until the very end so that you can get the gist and get to know exactly what to expect if you're thinking of coming to work in Portugal. Especially this is for job seeker visa holders and anyone else who is thinking of coming to Portugal to work, then this video is for you. If it's not for you, please go ahead and share it with somebody else who could benefit from it. And please also subscribe. My name is Nduta Wambura. I do not gatekeep. I do not sugarcoat as well on this channel. So please go ahead and subscribe so that you can get all the information that I share for free right here on this channel. Now, obviously, I always encourage you to please do your own research because I am not an immigration lawyer. I just give information as it is so that you can also do your own research before you can move anywhere abroad. Now, moving abroad, and in fact, moving to Portugal has been really the thing that everybody is talking about and has been painted as if it's the bed of roses. But really, the reality on the ground is quite different. It has become quite expensive to actually live in the big cities, especially in Lisbon, in Porto, in the Algarve, in Faro. It never used to be like this. However, the prices have gone all the way up, either because of inflation as well as other changes. There has been an influx of people coming to Portugal, and so driving all the prices all the way up. And so it's important for you to realize that it is not as cheap as is touted to be. It's not as cheap, especially in the main cities. However, if you are thinking of moving to Portugal and going to the rural areas, then perhaps this cost might be quite lower as compared to the main cities. So listen up. So now, with the minimum wage being 870 euros, the government has also given another incentive to not tax the minimum wage earners. So this would mean that if you come to Portugal and you find yourself in a job that is paying minimum wage, this would mean that you would be exempt from tax. This is an incentive from the government, obviously due to the inflation rates and also due to the cost of living being all the way up. And especially like in Lisbon, for instance, if you're renting a house in Lisbon and you're lucky enough to get a one-bedroom apartment, it would be anything between 1,000 euros to 1,500 euros. So obviously the math will not math in that sense. So there has been also a few other changes in the tax brackets. So for instance, if you are earning the maximum amount, which is about 83,000 euros, then you would be taxed about 48%. And so this has been an update. Before, it used to be if you're earning 80,000 euros, then you would have 48% tax bracket, but now it has increased to 83,000 euros. So there has been quite a number of changes within the tax brackets. And so these changes are just to basically just to make you pay less tax and have a more comfortable lifestyle, if you may. But I will tell you for free, it's still as expensive as it gets, which is why you will see several people going on the streets to actually demonstrate. I support them 100% because I've lived in this country for such a long time, and I can tell you that there has been so many changes, so many things happening to the extent that it is becoming way too much, even for the typical Portuguese people to actually live in this country. So another change that has happened is the youth tax exemption. So if you are 35 years and below, then you are going to get an incentive from the government whereby you will be 100% tax exempt regardless of the profession or regardless of the type of education that you've had. You will be tax exempt for the first year, and then that lowers down to 75% exemption in the second year, and over the third, fourth, fifth, all the way to the 10th year, you get an exemption for at least a period of 10 years. And this is to encourage more young people to actually work in Portugal, because you find that more and more young people actually try to find opportunities outside Portugal. So this is an incentive by the government to actually have more youth staying in the country and working in the country. So I would say that this is definitely something that will benefit youth, about 350 to 400,000 youth. And this would be something that if you're thinking of moving here, or if you're Portuguese and you're thinking of moving back to Portugal to work, then this would be an incentive that you can take advantage of if you're 35 years and younger. Another update that has happened is that there has been an increase in the meal allowances, and these are meal allowances that are usually paid on a card, and so it is now going to be 10 euros 20 cents per day. They have been updating this for quite a bit of time now, and now it's going to be 10 euros and 20 cents. Now, if you do the math and now compare this with the cost of living, has the cost of living gone down? No, it is still the same. And unless you are staying in a rural area, or maybe perhaps you have a remote job and you are living in a rural area and you are able to actually reduce this cost, then perhaps you might feel a big of a difference. But I will tell you for free that the cost of living is still on the high. So let's break it down. So your housing cost will always be the highest cost that you have in Portugal. Wherever you go, it doesn't matter whether it's in the rural area or wherever it is, housing is always going to be the highest cost. And in Lisbon especially, and in Porto and Faro, these big cities, you will find that for one-bedroom apartment, if you are looking for a one-bedroom apartment, for instance, in Lisbon Central, it will go anything from 1,000 to 1,500. I have seen even apartments nowadays for 2,000 euros, a one-bedroom apartment for 2,000 euros in Lisbon Central. Now, even if you go to the other bigger cities in Porto and the Algarve, this is going to be definitely the same scenario. So you can expect that you will pay quite a lot for accommodation, which is why most people will definitely opt into share houses, and that way you reduce your cost significantly. And so what I mean by sharing houses obviously is for you to have your own bedroom where you share the common places, you share the sitting area as well as the kitchen, and this is common practice especially in the bigger cities in Lisbon, in Porto, in Faro, and so on and so forth. So what can you do to reduce this cost? One of the things you can do is to live away from the bigger cities and commute. If, for instance, you have a job in Lisbon, you can opt to live away, far away from Lisbon and commute every day. It's obviously going to take a toll on you. However, if you count the cost of commuting and staying in Lisbon, it is definitely better to actually commute, because at least you can even get a monthly pass for about 40 euros and you can use the public transport and be able to reach your work. Now, besides the cost of accommodation, what other costs can you expect? Obviously, things like food. I would say that the cost of food is actually much lower, and I would say for one individual, it would range from about 200 euros to 300 euros on groceries. This is obviously dependent on what you like to consume and what, are your preferences and on a daily. So I would say anything between 200 to 300 euros a month. And if you want to dine out, again, depending on whether you want to go on a fine dining or you just are very typical just going out for a coffee in your local area, then I would say about 100 euros, but it could go all the way to 200 euros depending on, again, your preferences, or even 300 euros sometimes. Now, medical insurance would range anything between 20 to 50 euros, again, depending on the plan that you would prefer to take. The public hospitals are actually usually available here. So what you would do, you would get a numero due tent. It can take long, way long. So please be on the lookout for that. You can go to a public hospital and get treated. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter whether you're a tourist in Portugal. You can actually go and access public health care. Other things that you want to look out for would be things like entertainment. For instance, if you want to go for the movies, it would be anything between 7 euros to 10 euros. If you want to go and hang out in various places, now it depends on the cost of these places. It could be like 10 euros to go to a a museum or go to an art place. It depends on where you want to actually hang out for entertainment purposes. Things like gym would cost anything between 30 to 50 euros or even 100 euros. I've seen places that are nowadays charging even up to 200 euros per month for the gym, which is absolutely ridiculous, especially in Lisbon Central. If you're thinking of perhaps things like clothing, you can put a budget as an individual, again, depending on you, could be anything between 50 to all the way to 200 euros, depending on what you actually want to change in your wardrobe, or maybe there are things that are necessities that you have to change every other single month. Now, that is very dependent on you. A pro tip from me, I always just buy things when they are on sale because it's expensive. So I usually wait for the winter sale that begins around at the end of December all the way to February, which is when I budget and plan to buy anything new between that period of time, or wait for the summer sale that begins around end of June all the way to around August, thereabouts. So I usually plan my purchases within that period of time so that I can also be able to save as an individual, because it is also very, very expensive as an individual as well. If you're thinking of things to do with flying or maybe visiting other places or traveling and so on and so forth, now this is dependent on you. If you want to travel within the country, it is actually pretty easy. So if, for instance, you would rent a car, you can get at least fuel for about €1.70, depending also again on the type of car that you rented. But if you're driving, then this would be the cost. However, the tolls within the various places that you will go, then this can be all the way up depending on you. Again, I would say, for instance, for me, if I want to travel to a place like Nazaré, or maybe go to Porto or go to Faro, any one of these places, for me to cut the cost, I usually prefer going either on a bus. It's so easy to find like a Flix bus or Ready Expressos or whatever it is, and buy a ticket from these buses, which is much, much lower as compared to even driving. And even the trains, sometimes you can get a ticket, for example, on CP.pt, which is the train system in Portugal, for a reduced cost, especially if you book at least maybe 8 days prior. For instance, on the Alpha Pendula that goes all the way from Porto to Faro, you can easily get a ticket much cheaper there if you book at least a week or more before your trip. Sometimes I also prefer to just basically just go around walking and just use the metro, and maybe go to places like the city center, or maybe go to places like Cascais. You can still use your monthly pass and it will suffice pretty much all around, and that way it doesn't quite cost you as much to go to these places. If you want to fly to places like Madeira, or if you want to even fly like to Faro or to Porto, then you can stock the flights on skyscanner.pt, and you can even check a link down below where I will be giving you a discount with Skyscanner. And so these are things to think about. So if you think about it, I would say for you to survive as an individual in Lisbon Central would be about 1,900 all the way to 2,500 as an individual in Lisbon Central. Okay, so if you are thinking of reducing this cost, then you can actually slash that by half. If, for instance, you actually live in a rural area, and I'm talking about towns in the Alentejo region, for instance, you can go even to the northern region, further away from Porto. You can also go to Faro, further away from Faro itself, and you can find places that are cheaper, especially the accommodation. Once you cut out, or once you actually get accommodation, then the rest of the things can be easy to navigate through. So I would say the cost of living is still all the way up, especially in the bigger cities, because if you look at Portugal, most of the people actually just concentrate on where the water is, which is in Lisbon, in Porto, in Faro, and rarely do people go to the inland of Portugal. And if you choose to actually go live in the mainland areas, in the rural areas, then this would be a plus for you, because you can reduce this cost even by half. You can find that your cost of living is maybe like 900 euros per month, you know. And however, now what you're doing in those rural areas, what is what is going to matter. For instance, if you're working on as a remote, you know, as a nomad, then you know this would be perfect for you, because you would have your own pace and your cost is much lower. However, these rural areas, they tend to have less of activity. So if you're a social person, you like to go out, you like to go meet people, then it would mean for you to commute to the main cities maybe during the weekends, so that you can also have some sort of life going on, and so on and so forth, which is actually very much doable. So these are the updates that have been happening in Portugal. It is still quite expensive. It is going all the way up actually. However, it is still so much doable. What I would say is, if you're moving here, please respect the culture of the country. Honestly speaking, I have seen some really terrible things happening on the internet. I have seen some of the most terrible things even happening on the ground. People not respecting the Portuguese culture, people coming here and overdoing things, and you know, making the prices go all the way up. And it is even sad to see how Lisbon has become, you know, an international place, and it's, you know, very few people who are Portuguese who actually live in the city center, because it's become that expensive. Now, I hope this video has helped you. It's really just a small breakdown of, you know, things to expect, and you know what has been happening. The cost of living, has it changed? Has it been lower? It is still going all the way up, I will not lie to you. However, the government incentives are, you know, kind of helping. There needs to be more that needs to be done, obviously. However, I would say that Portugal is still the most amazing country. It has the most amazing of landscapes. 100%, you know, the quality of life is really much better here as compared to other European countries, for sure. And I would say that if you're moving here, please make sure that you respect the culture, respect the people, you know, learn the language, don't be disrespectful. Okay, it just imagine that, you know, if somebody else who is foreign moving into your own country that you moved out of, and you're going there to disrespect them, you know, people are coming there to disrespect you, how would you feel? Put yourself in those shoes and then act accordingly. And again, once again, I hope this video has been helpful to you, and until next time, bye.